Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Since most of the gurus are out there regurgitating the same news and only giving you fluff pieces, then I guess I should be the one that is fair and balanced. So I can talk about good stuff and I can talk about negative stuff, because it's important for you to know the complete picture. In case you haven't noticed lately, I've been releasing videos trying to walk people through the stuff they need to know in order to get an idea of when the exchange rate might possibly change, okay? So just understand that the news that I bring you isn't about becoming depressed, isn't about feeling like it's never going to revalue, but it is important to understanding how the news affects the Iraqi exchange rate, okay? Before we get started, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, head on over to our friends at Miles Franklin. The link will be down below in the description. When you make your purchase, make sure you use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and they'll take care of you. If you have any additional questions, you can reach us over here at this phone number or over here at this particular email. For all orders over $10,000, reach out by email and we'll make sure that you get a great deal. So come on over to Miles Franklin and add to your precious metal inventory. Just a quick recap of the good news. NATO, Iraq is a regional leader in the region, and today it is more secure and stable. So this is a good report from NATO, claiming that Iraq is more stable than it's been, and only because, like I spoke about before, they're keeping their nose out of trouble. They don't want any kind of conflict whatsoever. But I'm sure everybody's already read this article to you. On the other side, UN staff on a $1.5 billion Iraq aid project demanding bribes. Whistleblowers allege large sums are being lost to corruption in Iraq as donors fail to track spending on post-war reconstruction. This is exactly one of the issues that Iraq has to tackle, and we know they're working on it. Staff working on the UN in Iraq are allegedly demanding bribes in return for helping businessmen win contracts on post-war reconstruction projects in the country. The Guardian investigation was found. So these are people working in the UN, and the UN is a very, very corrupt organization. So they are the ones wanting bribes. You know, they probably figure, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. The alleged kickbacks are one of the number of claims of corruption and mismanagement the Guardian has uncovered in the Funding Facility for Stabilization, a United Nations development program launched in 2015 and backed by $1.5 billion in support so far from 30 donors, including the UK. Since 2003 U.S.-led invasion, the international community has pumped billions of aid dollars into Iraq. 20 years on, the country still suffers from poor services and infrastructure despite being the world's fourth largest oil producer and generating a record-breaking $115 billion in oil revenues last year. Corruption and kickbacks have been described as the lifeblood of politics in Iraq. This is not a good label, you guys. But, this is not what the Iraqi people need. So there has to be serious repercussions for when these people are caught, or else they'll just keep doing it. Unfortunately, when your government is very corrupt, I would imagine that a big bulk of these people looking for handouts are somehow related to those in power, which is why the UN carries out projects directly, promising more transparency than local institutions. In a statement to The Guardian, the UNDP said it had internal mechanisms that prevent and detect corruption and mismanagement, supported by robust compliance procedures and internal controls. But interviews with more than 24 current and former UN employees, contractors, Iraq and Western officials suggest the UN is fueling the culture of bribery that has permeated Iraqi society since Saddam Hussein's overthrow in 2003. And here's a graph of the main funders. As you can see, we are one of them. Germany is the next. The Guardian has found that bribes of up to 15% of the contract value have been demanded by the UNDP staff, according to 3 employees and 4 contractors. In return, the employees help the contractors navigate the UNDP's complex bidding system to ensure they pass the vetting process. Nobody can get a contract without paying. There's nothing in this country you can get without paying. not from the government, not from UNDP, according to one contractor who told The Guardian they had been approached by UNDP staff demanding bribes. A UNDP employee said the deals were made in person rather than on paper to avoid detection, with influential Iraqis sometimes serving as guarantors. The third party also takes a share of the kickbacks, they said, adding that the contractors would choose people with relationships and power, which makes sense. Government officials entrusted by the UNDP to oversee construction projects also allegedly take a cut. Dude, do you see all the hands in this cookie jar? I mean, just to get a contract over in Iraq. You have the UNDP, you have the person who's going to guide you through the entire process, and you have government officials. So who the hell is going to punish these people when they are the people that are supposed to be the oversight? Contractors and UNDP staff who have overseen projects since officials used their authority to extort bribes from companies in return for signing off completed projects. Two contractors told The Guardian that they were forced to make such payments. In a statement, the UNDP said it took allegations of corruption and lack of transparency very seriously and had zero tolerance for fraud and corruption. When are some heads going to roll? Where are the people that got arrested? The United Nations agency said this policy applies equally to UNDP staff members as well as other personnel, vendors, implementing partners, and responsible parties engaged by the UNDP. Any allegations of bribery, corruption, or fraud is thoroughly assessed and, where appreciated, investigated by the UNDP's Independent Office of Audit and Investigation. As well as corruptions, funds have been spent on redundancies and United Nations large overheads, raising further questions about the share of the mammoth budget actually reached war-torn communities. So it's not just in Iraq, it's, why do you think we have so many wars? Because the military-industrial project sees that it's big money. And then contractors and political individuals see that it's big money as well. Look what's happening over in Ukraine. The UNDP said it charged indirect costs in accordance with the financial regulations and rules and the requirements of its executive board. Interviewees, many of whom spoke on conditions of anonymity for fear of retaliation, said the program had undergone an unwarranted expansion and extensions that had mostly served to sustain the UNDP's footprint while absolving the Iraqi government of its own obligations to rebuild the country. They described a perverse incentive structure in which the UN employees who wanted to keep their cushy salaries colluded with government officials who benefited financially to identify new projects and progress reports, enabling results to justify more funding. So when the people who are supposed to be the oversight of these projects are a huge part of the crime, who's going to report on who? The UNDP claims to have improved the lives of 8.9 million Iraqis, a fifth of the country's population, but The Guardian's visit to the project site suggests that some of these numbers may have been overstated, and I'm sure they are. In a village in northern Iraq, a UNDP sign outside the local health center claimed credited for the rehabilitation, but the facility, which suffered only light damage when the Iraqi forces drove out ISIS in 2017, was restored by two other organizations. And keep in mind, this is taxpayer money. Our governments donate it, but make no doubt about it, these are our tax-paying dollars. And people should be demanding not just transparency, but extreme punishment and a better way of tracking and auditing what's going on. And we should be able to see the results. By the time the UNDP turned up, the clinic had been functioning again for 2 years in what appears to be a digression from the original goal to rebuild damaged facilities. The UNDP built a new annex for the laboratory and x-ray facility, but the premises stood empty in October, with locals complaining that for 2 years the UNDP had failed to deliver on promises to equip the new departments. In contrast, a UNDP report in 2022 said the facility had been completed and was alongside other clinics in the province serving thousands of Iraqis, but the figures appear to be based on census data provided by the government rather than the actual usage. Who is responsible for going to each site to inspect that these are done? Not only do you need one inspector, but you need overlap so you can catch those who are lying about the completion of these projects. The UNDP said that it adhered to the technical and financial reporting requirements specified in an agreement with each donor. Donors have agreed to extend the program for another 2 years and want some of the remaining funds to be redirected towards social and institutional development, But the interviewees have described training and workshops run by the UNDP under such initiatives as trivial and lacking strategic coherence. Sessions were attended by government officials and community members, mostly for the sake of enjoying a free trip and cashing in allowances, The Guardian was told. UNDP just wanted to burn the money and show the donors that they were doing the workshops, said one former employee. A former employee described the UNDP livelihoods initiatives that taught displaced women to sew as unrealistic because the Iraqis tend to buy cheap imported clothes from local markets. They were trying to create an economy that didn't exist. It was like going back to the medieval times, they added. The UNDP said initiatives such as skills training were developed based on community needs and in full consultation with the local authorities or community leaders. Donors have admitted to struggling to track how their funding has been spent and rely on the UNDP to carry out monitoring and evaluations through the internal unit the agency described as completely independent, even though it reports to the UNDP's management. Yeah, okay. 5 interviewees familiar with the UNDP's reporting said it did not reflect reality on the ground. A lot of these documents are mostly for PR purposes, said the consultant who carried out an external review of another UNDP scheme. When you actually go to these provinces and sit down with the receipts for these funds and you actually look at the projects, it's a far cry from what we perceive from reading these reports. Embassy staff insulated behind concrete walls and only allowed limited field visits due to strict security protocols, appear to lack the means to challenge the information. Everyone stays just 2 years, and by the time they figure it out, they leave. That's how these programs survive year on year. In response to the Guardian's request for comment, an advisor to Iraq's Prime Minister, al-Sudani, said that if allegations of corruption in the UNDP program and the involvement of government agencies were proven to be true, legal actions would be taken. Is that true? I don't think so. We will communicate with the highest authorities at the UN to discuss and investigate the details of these allegations and refer those involved in corruption to the competent authorities. We will also review all programs to find out the truth. So you see, it's not just the politicians in Iraq that are corrupt. There are outside agencies that are responsible for helping Iraq rebuild, that are stealing from Iraq and Iraqi people, using each country's taxpayer dollars as bribes. But like I said, it's not just in Iraq, it's all over the place. So yes, Iraq can be a lot further along than they are. They can have a much more stronger economy. But when you have people out there skimming off the top, it makes it really hard to get ahead. Anyways, that's it for now. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. I'll catch you later. I'm out.